The, the temporal distortion engine pulsed with a low, menacing hum from the heart of my mobile sanctuary. It was a cathedral of old-world technology, its metallic spires and glowing conduits, a stark contrast to the organic, flowing chi weaves that now comprise the majority of my systems. I have retrieved it, a moment to Falke's genius in my own desperate will, and now the true work began. The mobile sanctuary, a vessel of defiance suspended in the silent void of the old world core, was the stage. The engine was the power. I was no longer merely a fugitive. I was an architect of a new reality, building a home outside the grasp of time itself. But the work was slow, painstaking, and fraught with a peril that defied all my previous calculations. The engine was a piece of shattered physics, its temporal fields constantly fighting against the raw, chaotic energy of the core and the methodical, intrusive harmony of the planar world. My hands, imbued with the quiet power of integrated chi, moved across my main console. My mind was a foundry, forging solutions in a constant, frantic scream of calculations, a desperate race against an enemy I knew was watching from beyond the veil of chaos. The stakes had never been higher. I had to complete the sanctuary before the syndicate, led by Alyssin, could find a way to stabilize the core and get to me. The temporal engine was the key to my salvation, but it was also a volatile, difficult to control device that could just as easily unmake me as it could save me. I felt the raw power of the dissonance, a deep thrumming that resonated in my very bones. The core was not a dead place. It was a screaming void of potential, and I was trying to tame a single, impossible thread within its endless scream. I felt their presence long before the attack began. Their attack began. The chi signatures of Alyssin's team, once a distant hum, now formed a tight, suffocating ring around the core's periphery. Their numbers were immense, their will a single, focused point of intent. Then, I felt a new chi signature, a colossal chorus of harmonious frequencies that didn't attack the core directly, but instead radiated with a terrifying, methodical purpose. It was a harmonizing beacon, a weapon of sublime intellectual cruelty. It was not designed to breach the core. It was designed to slowly, methodically, and with an unyielding patience, stabilize its dissonance from the outside. Alyssin was not fighting a brute force war. She was fighting a war of attrition on a philosophical level. She was attempting to force the core itself to conform to Arden's will, to make it a place of harmony, and in doing so, to make it a place she could enter. The siege was not a storm of violence, but a profound temporal pressure. The beacon's harmonious frequencies, a constant, low thrum, began to push back against the core's chaos. I could see the effect on my consoles. The chaotic, vibrant colors of the core's chi weave began to bleed into a softer, more uniform hue. The temporal anomalies, once wild and unpredictable, began to slow down, to become more stable. It was a terrifyingly elegant weapon, a testament to Alyssin's brilliant, cruel mind. She was giving me an hourglass, and with every passing moment, the sand was falling, and the walls of my sanctuary were weakening. The pressure was a palpable, suffocating force, a profound intellectual weight that sought not to crush me, but to dissolve me. I responded with a frantic, desperate focus. I had to complete the temporal fold. My plan was to use the engine to bend and fold space-time around my sanctuary, creating a pocket of reality that existed outside of Arden's laws. My work was a constant battle. The temporal engine, a monument to a universe with different laws, fought against the core's chaos, and both were under pressure from the Syndicate's beacon. I was fighting two wars at once, one against the chaotic energies of the core, and one against the methodical harmony of the Syndicate. The immense strain on my mind and body was unlike anything I had ever experienced. My consciousness stretched thin across the three conflicting forces, began to fray at the edges. My physical form, encased in my mobile sanctuary, began to tremble with the strain. I was a man fighting two gods with a single, fragile tool. To provide the narrative with the depth and substance it required, my thoughts drifted, in moments of profound exhaustion, to my past. I remember Falky, a genius with a gentle soul, a man who had seen the end of his world and had sought to preserve a piece of it. I remembered the desperation in his eyes as he worked on the temporal engine, a desperate final attempt to escape the coming unmaking. He had failed, and in that failure, he had left a ghost of his genius, a legacy of defiance that I had now found. My struggle was not just my own, it was his, the final, desperate act of rebellion against the serene indifference of the universe. I reflected on Arden and Alyssin, not just as enemies, but as philosophical adversaries, a clash of fundamental beliefs about the nature of existence. They believed in harmony, in the ultimate reweaving of all things into a single, perfect tapestry. I believed in the right to be different, the right to exist as a single, unique thread, a beautiful discordance in a sea of sameness. The climax of the Temporal Siege arrived with a jarring, violent suddenness. The Syndicate's beacon had reached a new level of power. Its harmonious frequencies now pushing against the core's chaos with a profound, almost unstoppable force. The temporal engine's field, already under immense strain, began to scream. A feedback loop, a temporal paradox, threatened to rip my sanctuary apart before it was complete. My consoles flashed with a cascade of red alerts, reality shards. Frozen fragments of a moment that had yet to happen began to appear inside my sanctuary, their chaotic energies threatening to tear my physical form apart. The temporal siege was now a siege of my very sanity. I had to make a desperate choice. I could not wait for the engine to stabilize on its own. It would be too late. I had to intervene, to use a dangerous burst of my own dissonant chi to stabilize the field, to force the conflicting energies into a momentary ceasefire. This was a high-stakes sacrifice. It would reveal my precise location to the Syndicate, but it would also give me the precious moments I needed to complete the temporal fold. I poured my chi, the very essence of my being, into the temporal machine. I felt my consciousness, my very soul stretch and thin, a thread pulled taut between two realities. The engine screamed, its metal casing glowing with an unholy light. The temporal feedback loop stabilized, reality shards. A threat only moments before shimmered and vanished. I had succeeded, but in that moment of triumph, I felt a new chi signature, a flare of recognition from the Syndicate. They had seen me, they had found my location. My defiance had been an open declaration, a beacon of my own making. My sanctuary was complete, but it was not the perfect, stable refuge I had envisioned. It was a small, fragile pocket of reality, constantly humming with the threat of collapse, a constant reminder of the price of my own defiance. A constant reminder of the price of my defiance. The Syndicate's beacon was still active, its light a constant pressure on my new home. The temporal siege was not over. It had just entered a new, more terrifying phase. I was a god in my own pocket of reality, but a god with an army of gods waiting outside my door. My defiance was no longer a whisper. It was the thunderous roar